At the beginning of the story, we see an airport where we meet a pilot named Brad. He's walking quickly toward his plane while talking to his daughter on a video call. His daughter says, "Dad, I saw the news this morning. They said the weather in the area you're flying to is really bad. A lot of flights have been cancelled because of it. You should cancel your flight too and come back home." Brad smiles and replies, "I've flown safely through weather like this many times before. Don't worry, I'll be home soon." Hearing this, his daughter smiles and hangs up. Brad then boards the plane and meets his co-pilot, who looks a little nervous since it's his first official flight. Just then, a flight attendant comes and tells Brad that someone wants to meet him outside. When Brad steps out, a police officer informs him that, due to an emergency, he has to transport a dangerous criminal named Tony on this flight. Tony is a strong and extremely dangerous man charged with murder, and he's being transported to another country to serve a life sentence. The officer tells Brad, "We're giving you this responsibility because you're one of our most skilled and sensible pilots." Brad agrees and instructs the officers to seat Tony in the last row, away from the other passengers. Once all passengers are on board, Brad checks with the cabin crew to make sure everything is ready, and the plane takes off. After reaching cruising altitude, Brad switches the plane to autopilot and starts chatting with his co-pilot about family. He shows him a photo of his daughter and says, "I love her more than anything. We only have each other in this world." Meanwhile, the passengers are enjoying the flight, unaware that something terrible is about to happen. Everything seems normal until the weather suddenly turns bad. The plane begins to shake slightly. Brad becomes concerned and makes an announcement asking everyone to fasten their seatbelts. He tries to contact air traffic control via radio, but the radio has stopped working due to the storm. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning strikes the plane, causing it to shake violently. Brad steps out of the cockpit to check on the passengers. Seeing that they are safe gives him a little relief, but the lights start flickering and then go out completely. More turbulence hits, and Brad is thrown against the cabin ceiling, hitting his head and falling down with a wound on his forehead. Panic spreads among the passengers. Brad rushes back to the cockpit to help his co-pilot stabilize the aircraft. Visibility is near zero, and the weather is worsening. Brad says, "We'll have to descend, one more hit like that, and we'll lose control completely." They begin lowering the altitude rapidly. Inside, passengers are terrified. The police officer guarding Tony drops his phone and unbuckles his seatbelt to pick it up. A flight attendant also unbuckles to help him. But because the plane is dropping fast, both are thrown upward into the cabin ceiling, dying instantly from the impact. The pilots manage to stabilize the plane at a low altitude, but now the power is almost gone. Brad realizes they can't make it to the airport. He plans to crash land in the ocean, but just then he spots an island in the distance. He redirects the plane toward it and decides to attempt an emergency landing. After a tense few minutes, Brad successfully lands the plane on a road on the island. Miraculously, all passengers survive without serious injuries. Shortly after, a short circuit sparks in the back of the plane. Brad smiles slightly. It means there's still a bit of power left on board. Once everyone exits the plane, a flight attendant tells Brad that the police officer and one of the flight attendants have died. Brad feels devastated. Meanwhile, the airline company owner realizes one of his planes has gone missing. Because of the storm, there's been no radio contact and no sign of a landing. He calls in a rescue expert named Scarsdale, who specializes in finding missing people and downed aircraft. The airline owner tells him, "I need every detail, where my plane went, where my crew and passengers are." Scarsdale immediately begins the search. Back on the island, the passengers are confused and scared, wondering why they landed there. Brad gathers them and explains, "We had to make an emergency landing. There's still some power left in the plane, we'll fix what we can. Until then, please stay calm. We'll be rescued soon." Brad then checks the plane again and finds that the power is too low. He and the co-pilot spread out a map to locate their position. The co-pilot studies it and says, "We're on a private island, a dangerous one. The people here don't follow any government or law. If they find us, our lives could be in danger. Even our government might not be able to save us. Brad replies, then we have no choice. We must somehow contact our rescue team and get them here, that's the only way off this island. They try to fix the radio, but it's been completely destroyed by the lightning strike. Brad then returns to the passengers and says, the radio isn't working because of the damage, but don't worry. We'll find another way. For now, we'll head toward the other side of the island. Brad tells everyone, Tony and I will go look for a working radio. Once we find it, we'll contact the control tower and send them our location. They'll dispatch a rescue team to get you all out of here. Then Brad makes a big decision. He says, Tony will come with me, and unlocks Tony's handcuffs. He instructs his co-pilot, you stay here and try to repair the plane's power system. I'll find a way to reach someone and bring help. After that, Brad and Tony head off into the jungle to search for a radio. On the way, Tony thanks Brad for trusting him. Meanwhile, on the island, we see a terrorist group. One of their scouts runs to the leader and says, a plane made an emergency landing here. It's full of passengers from different countries. Hearing this, the leader pays the scout some money and orders his men to get ready. Back in the jungle, Brad and Tony continue walking. Tony asks, why did you free me? And where are we going now? Brad replies, because I can't put everyone's life at risk because of you. There's a dangerous militant group on this island, and I need your help to fight them. Tony responds, I have a military background. I served in the US Army for several years. After a while, Tony suddenly stops responding. When Brad turns around, Tony is gone, he's escaped into the jungle. Brad, now alone, keeps moving forward and comes across an abandoned factory. Inside, he finds an old telephone, but it's broken. He starts reconnecting some of the wires, and miraculously, the phone begins to work. Brad quickly dials the airline helpline and gives them his location and all the details. But due to static and poor connection, his voice doesn't go through clearly, and the operator hangs up. Thinking fast, Brad calls his daughter instead. He tells her his location and asks her to write everything down and take it to the airline office immediately. While he's still on the call, a man suddenly attacks him from behind. Brad fights back and manages to knock the man unconscious after a struggle. Then he senses someone else entering the room. He hides quickly. But it's Tony, who has killed several of the militants and taken their weapons. Tony calls out, it's me, don't be scared. Brad steps out, and Tony hands him a gun for protection. They move down to the lower floor of the factory, where they find a camera. Checking the footage and the passports lying nearby, they realize that the terrorists on this island kidnap people and demand huge ransoms from their families, and even after receiving the money, they kill the captives instead of releasing them. Brad is horrified. He now knows their passengers are in serious danger. They leave the factory and find a vehicle outside, the same one that belonged to the man Brad fought earlier. They get in and drive toward the plane to rescue the passengers. Meanwhile, at the crash site, the passengers are waiting anxiously for Brad to return with help. They suddenly hear a car approaching and feel relieved, thinking Brad has brought the rescue team. But instead, it's the terrorists, who start firing bullets to scare everyone. The sound of gunfire reaches Brad and Tony, who immediately speed up the vehicle toward the plane. The terrorist leader demands the flight attendant give him a list of all passengers. Terrified, she quickly hands it over. One of the terrorists asks the co-pilot, where's your senior pilot? The co-pilot replies, he went into the jungle for something and hasn't returned yet. Just then, Brad and Tony arrive near the site but watch quietly from a distance. Suddenly, one of the female passengers tries to escape, but the terrorists shoot and kill her on the spot. Brad is about to rush forward to help, but Tony stops him, saying, stay calm. It's not the right time. The leader orders all the passengers to board a bus, leaving 2 men behind to loot the plane for valuables. Then they start driving the bus toward their hideout. Once the gang leaves, Brad furiously turns to Tony and says, they took our passengers, and you didn't let me go after them. Tony replies calmly, they were too many, Brad. Even if you had gone after them alone, you wouldn't have stood a chance against such a large army. They couldn't fight back. Now, both of them start moving toward the plane and catch the two goons who were stealing valuable items from it. At gunpoint, Brodie asks them where their leader might have taken the passengers. One of them replies that there's a hideout not far from here, that's where they took everyone. Meanwhile, Brodie's daughter gives the rescue expert a paper that Brodie had written on. It contains the plane's location and all the necessary details. Using a satellite, the rescue expert tracks the plane and discovers it stranded on an island controlled by a dangerous terrorist group. The rescue expert immediately contacts the captain of a private army, explains the situation, and requests his help. The captain agrees and, along with his team, loads bags full of cash and weapons into their vehicle, preparing to head toward the island. Back at the crash site, Brodie notices that before the terrorists took the passengers, the co-pilot had managed to repair the plane's power system, and now, the plane's power is back on. Seeing this, Brodie feels a surge of hope. He leaves a message on his uniform for the incoming private army team, explaining everything, and sets out with Tony toward the terrorists' hideout where the passengers are being held. After trekking through the jungle, they reach the hideout and sneak inside quietly. Inside, they see the gang recording videos of the terrified passengers, planning to send those videos to their families to demand ransom. Meanwhile, the private army team sent by the rescue expert arrives near the plane. Finding no one there, the team leader checks inside and discovers two dead bodies, the same men the gang leader had sent to loot the plane. Brodie had killed them earlier. The captain also finds Brodie's note, which includes the directions to the terrorists' base. At the hideout, Brodie and Tony silently observe the gang. When they get an opportunity, they stealthily kill two terrorists from behind and move deeper inside. They reach a locked room where all the passengers are being held. Brodie wants to free them, but many guards are patrolling outside, and he doesn't have the key to the lock. One by one, Brodie and Tony eliminate the guards. Tony, wielding a hammer, smashes down several of them brutally. Brodie grabs a key from one of the dead guards and unlocks the room, freeing the passengers. He instructs them to quickly get into the same bus that the terrorists had used to bring them there. Tony then informs Brodie that there's only one road leading out, and it's heavily guarded by armed men who will open fire as soon as they're spotted. Seeing the terrified passengers, Brodie decides to risk his life. He tells Tony, "I'll distract them while you get everyone out of here." Tony initially refuses, saying, "They'll kill you if you do that." But Brodie insists, there's no other way. Tony reluctantly agrees. Brodie steps out and confronts the gang leader, saying, "I've already called for help. A rescue team will be here any minute. Let these passengers go." The gang members burst out laughing and begin beating Brodie. The leader says, "How can I let them go? Without money, no one leaves alive." Just as they are about to kill Brodie, the private rescue team arrives and opens fire on the terrorists. A fierce gunfight breaks out, and many gang members are killed. The team rescues Brodie, carries him to the bus, and drives away. The gang leader sees that many of his men, including his younger brother, have been killed. Enraged, he vows revenge, "I'll kill every single one of them. No one escapes me alive." He orders his remaining men to prepare for pursuit. On the bus, the private army captain explains, "We're just a 5-man private team. We're not the official rescue squad, they'll take some more time to get here." Hearing this, Brodie panics and says, "We don't have that much time. The gang will be after us soon, and they'll kill us if they catch up." Then he says, "I have an idea." When they reach the plane, Brodie tells everyone, the plane's power is back, which means it can take off again. "We can't wait for the official rescue team. If we stay, those terrorists will find and kill us. Everyone, get on board now." All the passengers hurry onto the plane while Brodie starts checking all systems. The private team prepares for the upcoming fight. Suddenly, the terrorists arrive and launch another attack. A massive gunfight ensues. The private team, equipped with superior weapons, kills many of the attackers. Brodie shouts to the captain, "In 5 minutes, I'm taking off. Get everyone on board." He then goes to Tony and thanks him for standing by him during this crisis. Dodging bullets, Brodie climbs into the cockpit, joins the co-pilot, and begins the takeoff procedure. Meanwhile, Tony runs out of bullets. While searching the private team's bags for ammo, he finds one filled with cash. Ignoring the money, he grabs more bullets and keeps fighting the terrorists. Brodie successfully turns the plane around. The private team's soldiers start boarding one by one while Tony provides cover fire. The plane's power also restores the radio system. The airline's owner contacts Brodie and gives him coordinates for a safe landing zone nearby. Everyone boards the plane, except Tony. He decides not to go with them, fearing that if he returns, the police will arrest him again. He takes the bag full of money and runs into the jungle. The gang leader, furious after losing his men, grabs a rocket launcher, intending to destroy the plane in one shot. But Tony spots him in time and shoots him dead, saving everyone. Brodie smiles proudly at Tony's final act of courage and manages to lift the plane into the sky. Tony looks up, relieved and happy that everyone, including Brodie, is safe, then disappears into the forest with the money. Brodie flies the plane away from the island. The airline owner guides him toward a nearby airport. But suddenly, the plane's engine catches fire again, and it begins to fail. Brodie activates the emergency system and carefully tries to land the plane on the runway. After a tense struggle, he finally succeeds, saving everyone on board. The passengers and co-pilot rejoice, while the airline owner and his team cheer in relief. Brodie walks to the passenger cabin to check on everyone, they're all safe. Seeing this, he feels immense peace. The passengers stand and applaud him, thanking him for saving their lives. Soon, the official rescue team arrives. Brodie sends all passengers with them and, finally at peace, sits on the plane's steps, speaking to his daughter over the phone. And with that, the story comes to an end. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to our channel.